Hello, sports fans. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you for stopping by our YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the subscribe and notifications toggle so you never miss a thing. All of our content up here every day. Looking forward to it. Thank you, and we'll see you on the radio.
Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by the Hard Truth Distilling Company in Brown County, Indiana.
So for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, it's time!
3 on the way. Oh! It went in! It went in! And Indiana wins the ball game!
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Float game for the win! Ayler's gone. Come on, touchdown, Indy! Woo! IU! America! They got a football team now!
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
You know that I'm the cream of the crop.
Now, from the Hard Truth Studios, here's Jim Coyle.
So you've got that. Did you know that and I'll bring this up when Angelo joins us. In some countries, the movie Hoosiers was called Best Shot. Best Shot. It just doesn't have the same ring to it as Hoosiers. But of course, I guess people in other countries wouldn't know what a Hoosier really was. So I guess that's, or maybe I guess there's probably nothing, there was probably no way to translate the word Hoosier into Cantonese or Japanese or something like that. It would make it very difficult to do that, but odd sometimes you see those. And through the many conversations I've had with Angelo, I do remember some funny funny little pieces about it. And speaking of Norman Dale, we were fortunate that the great Gene Hackman ended up playing that role. The studio wanted Burt Reynolds. And I remember the story Angelo told that him and David Anspall went down to see Burt, I think in Florida. And almost got into a fight with Burt Reynolds. He wanted to he challenged David to go outside to a fight, basically, it seemed like. And he was not happy because they didn't want, if you remember Burt Reynolds movies, he's always, looking into the camera and giving that Burt Reynolds kind of thing. And they didn't want that for this. And I understand why. And I don't think it could have worked out any better than it did. Joined now by the great Angelo Pizzo, Bloomington native and resident creator, writer, producer of not just Hoosiers, but My All-American and several other feature movies. Angelo, how are you, sir?
I'm doing all right, recovering from the flu, but getting better every day.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're getting better. Sorry that you've been sick. I'm very fortunate that you took the time to join us. It's always a pleasure to have you. It seems like that's been going around. I've heard a few people getting hit with that.
Yeah, I thought I avoided it, but now that it's starting to spring, I guess I just caught the back end of it.
Yeah, it's and it's that funky time of weather that up and down. It doesn't help any of us. I'm ready to get to the warmer time for that for certain. I was just telling right before you joined us in your many trips or visits with us, some of the stories I recall that we were fortunate to get to watch Gene Hackman play Norman Dale, because had the studios had their way, we'd have been watching Burt Reynolds give his looking into the camera routine and all of that. And you guys had, what was it, David Anspall? He tried to fight outside down there.
Yeah, well, we had a meeting with Burt in his house because the studio that financed the film had sent the script to Burt without our permission. And Burt was the #1 box office star at the time. and he was in the middle of his Smoking Bandit series. And David and I did not want him, but we had to go through the meeting anyway. And I think he picked up right away we weren't, kowtowing to him and, genuflecting at his feet. And David mentioned one of the things that he was apparently very sensitive about, that he was always trying to break the fourth wall and wink at the camera. And Burt went nuts. He just got up out of his chair and said, "How dare you say that to me in my house?" Accused me of not being a professional. And he walked over and he told him to, stand up and take a beating. So we had our executive producer get in the middle of it. I was off to the sides, very amused by the whole thing.
I can't. That's a great story to always have, so I can see why it was so amusing. How did you guys end up with Gene Hackman? I know that his career had kind of plateaued at a time where he had some early success, but still a great star.
Well, I mean, it's kind of a long story, but I'll make it short. We had making no progress with anybody in anything, and we were trying to. Our agents told us that no studio would want it. We sent it to different production companies and studios, and the script was rejected by everybody. And so at that point, our agent said, "Well, you need to raise the money independently." So we thought we could raise the money in Indiana. We came back to Indiana, met with Mel Simon's company, who was making films at the time, and we were rejected by Mel. And it's funny, his daughter Diane, whose name is on the Assembly Hall court, it was the head of development then, and she gave us a thumbs down on the script. And so we were just trying to figure out how to go about doing this. And David had a relationship with Jack Nicholson because David Anspaugh was a ski host in Aspen right out of college, and he would be Jack's host, and he actually ended up teaching Jack's daughter how to ski. And they developed a relationship because Jack went there quite a bit, and David worked at that job for 2 or 3 years, and Jack helped him get into USC grad school in film. And Jack had just directed a film that he did not star in called Drive, he said, which is about college basketball in a fictional small town, college town in Ohio. And we thought that we wanted to meet with him and ask him about how to raise the money for the movie. He agreed to meet with us on a Saturday morning, and we showed up, and he was still in bed, and it was a bizarre experience because we waited for a couple hours until he woke up, and then he looked at us and asked us why we were there. He'd forgotten about the meeting altogether. And we told him that why we were there, and we knew he had a passion for basketball, and maybe if he read the script, he could get behind it and help us support the financing. And so he told us to put the script in the alcove as we walked out, and there was a stack of scripts about 50 feet high, or 50, not 50. It was like 50 scripts in a stack, and we thought he'll never ever respond. And then David got a call from him about 2 months later, and he was in tears when he called me. He said, "You're not going to believe this. Gene thought we gave him that. I mean, Jack thought we gave him the script to be the coach." And he said he just called me. He said, "I love the script. I love the character. I'll do it." So all of a
Oh
sudden,
my.
we became our agency's favorite script because Jack was really huge then, and we went into a negotiation for Jack to play the coach, and it lasted a long time. And one of the reasons it lasted a long time was that he was involved in a lawsuit with MGM about a film that had fallen apart, and that he was not getting paid for the pay or play deal. And ultimately he couldn't work during that particular time. And we were coming up on fall in 1985. And he said, look, you got to shoot this in Indiana in the fall. He said, I'm not going to be able to do it this fall. And next fall, I'm going to be doing the the two Jakes, which is a sequel to Chinatown. So I'm not going to be available for you guys for 3 years. Don't wait for me. You got to make this now. Take it to DuVall or Hackman. So they'd be perfect for it. And so we actually went to Robert DuVall next, and we met with him, and he loved the script, and he said, I feel like I've just played this character. You know, it's a combination of Max Sledge and Tender Mercies and Santini, and the great Santini. And he passed on it, and he said, take it to Hackman. So we gave it to Gene, and Gene said yes. Now, a lot of people think that when Gene said yes, it automatically made a movie. But Gene's career was in a trough at that time. He had a tremendous success after he was a character actor until he was cast as Popeye Doyle in French Connection, and he won an Academy Award. It changed his profile in the business, and then he was really huge in Superman. And then he did 7 movies in a row where he was either the co-star or the leading actor that all lost money. And he was unhireable as a lead actor. People still wanted him as character actors, smaller parts. But so when Gene said yes, we then thought, well, we do have a shot with the script and Gene at the studios and production companies that were turned us down. So we did that. We resubmitted a new package, and we were turned down again. I mean, it was not for another year that we got a production company interested, and they didn't even want Hackman. They wanted Burt Reynolds. So it was almost like it was fated to be that we ended up, in a cornfield with Gene Hackman making this movie in 1985.
It's crazy how you go from Burt Reynolds to Jack Nicholson to Robert Duvall and Gene Hackman, 4
Yeah.
of the biggest names all time of actors. And then Gene, from what I remember, wasn't all that enthused about the movie itself and how it went, thinking it was not going to promote his career in any way.
Well, he was not in a good place mentally when we all gathered here in Indiana to make the film, and part of it was that his feeling that his career was over, and that he felt that the direction his career was going to be exacerbated by the fact that he had 2 guys that never made a movie before. I mean, David and I were neophytes. And he did like the script, but he didn't feel confident that we knew what we were doing. So there were constant. He just carried around. I think Gene has a lot of demons to begin with, and he acted out a lot of his anxieties on us, not so much on me, because he came from the theater. He was very, very respectful of the script and the dialogue. He would not change a word without my permission. That's kind of a rule of thumb in the theater. And but David, they had some tough going, for the first 2 or 3 weeks. He almost quit, and it just thought it wasn't worth it. He and Barbara were both going to quit, but he was encouraged by his agent that it would really be terrible precedent, and he'd lose the money, and he didn't care about us as the agent, but he hung in there. And one of the turning points was when Dennis Hopper showed up. So I don't remember Gene ever smiling for the first 2.5 weeks of him until Dennis showed up. And Dennis is such a funny guy, a sweet guy, a kind person. And Dennis really got what we were trying to do. He really believed in us. And part of it is that he thought that I mean, he was grateful that we were giving him a chance because he hadn't been working for 10 years. He was in and out of kind of rehab and drying out and so on. And he was only a year and a half sober at that point. So he had our back, and he really helped us smooth things over for Gene. And Dennis told us later that Gene said something to him during the last week of shooting when they were sitting on the bench together. He said, I hope you have your next gig lined up because this movie is going to be a career killer. Uh, and the parting shot that he made to me when I thanked him for all the good work he did before he got on a plane to go to L.A. was that, well, he said, I know you boys learned a lot, and I think it was all well intentioned, and I really enjoyed working with the boys. He said, but just be prepared for the fact that um, you might be very lucky to get that no one outside the state of Indiana will actually ever see this movie. And he said by the time in 5 or 6 years it'll be forgotten except by you boys. And I hope I forget it by the time my plane lands in LA.
Yeah. Well, it's been hardly the case, as it has been voted the #1 sports movie of all time by the Associated Press. I think the American Film Institute has it as #4 all time, which is just incredible.
Well, I should, Jim, I should add this because when we 6 months later after we finished our first cut, we needed Gene to do a lot of additional dialogue, and it's called looping, and he got word to us that he would not participate unless he saw the film and first, and we just figured he's not going to like it, and we needed to hire a voice actor, a sound-alike actor. But we got word from the agent that he would show up and do his job. And he walked in to that studio, went up to David, myself, shook our hands, and said, I don't know how the hell you boys did it, but you pulled it off. Congratulations. And from that point on, he could not have been more cooperative, more supportive of the film. We went on press junkets together. We did all sorts of things together. He was just awesome. He was a completely different person.
Well, you took the next question right out of me. Then I was going to ask, at what point was there ever a point that he acknowledged, hey, this is actually pretty good, because it was really good. And it was not only well received, but it's still well received. There's not many movies that can stand the test of time like that one has. That shows you a great movie. And everybody still loves to watch that.
One of his final interviews before he retired in the early 2000s, he was asked by an interviewer, of all the films that you have done, when people recognize you in public, do they identify you with any particular role? And the guy asked him, it must be Popeye Doyle of French Connection. He said, no, it's the coach in Hoosiers.
Yeah, Norman Dale, man. That's amazing. That has to make you proud, though, that especially you guys were rookies when you were doing that. You had all the vim and vigor and the drive and desire, and you've got this big time Hollywood star not really believing in it, but you still, not only did you go through, but you made a damn masterpiece. That's just not something most people get to hang in their life.
Well, we certainly didn't feel that way when we were making it. In fact, David and I kept on asking ourselves, is he right? Does this really suck? And is this going to be a disaster for all of us? We kept on thinking it was a career killer. And the reason that we felt that way was because, as I mentioned, we had never made a feature film before. And Gene was a pro. I mean, ours was like his 35th film. He was 57. And he knew so much more than we did. So we entertained the option of the fact that he might be right.
How did he prepare for the role as coach? I know that there may be some loose basements on like Bob Knight, you growing up in Bloomington, but this is not about Bob Knight, and it's not even about that per se. But how did he prepare for this role?
We brought a coach in that was our basketball coordinator, that coached in that period and actually coached against Milan. And
Wow.
And he I think they and we wrote down a lot of things for him to say, and they worked together for a very short time. but Gene doesn't like other people to help him prepare. So he took a little bit from this guy, this coach, and then he said, "That's enough. I don't need to talk to him anymore." And the funny thing was that we kept on feeding him lines, that coaching lines, but he kept on going back to the same lines over and over again. And then we would go up to him and say, he kept on saying, "Cut him off at the baseline." And he said it like 1,000 times. And we kept on saying, trying to give him new lines. And his way of this constant conflict between us was for him to just not say the lines we gave him. So he was real persnickety. Tom Abernathy suggested that he could bring Bob Knight up to, talk to him. And Gene said no, he had no interest in talking to Bob Knight.
Did he explain why, or
No, he didn't have to explain why in anything he did. He walked a different path, He was meticulous in his preparation, but most of it was internal. And the fact is, we didn't know Gene Hackman at all, and we admired his acting, but it turned out that not only was he going through a particular tough period in his life, but Gene is just the kind of guy who has a lot of demons. I mean, a lot of actors do, and he was a tortured soul when we worked with him, but that worked perfectly for the part, because that was the character of Norman Dale.
Yeah, and that's just a character that will live on forever. What was it like for you guys to work with three completely different actors in Barbara Hershey, Gene Hackman, and Dennis Hopper, who I'm gathering are completely different personality-wise?
Well, I think that one of the things you do learn is you don't talk to all actors in the same way, and that you establish different relationships. And for me as the writer, working with the dialogue with the different actors, you find out pretty quickly where their comfort is, kind of their comfort zone is, and just because a lot of times they'll come to you and they will talk to you about changing lines or changing words or dialogue, whatever. And you can be very frank and upfront with some people who don't have thin skin, and then the others, they take it as a personal affront if you reject their ideas. So it's always different. Dennis had no ego. You could throw anything at Dennis and he would do it. The difficulty we had with Dennis was he had done so many drugs and drank so much over the years that he had lost a lot of brain cells. He couldn't remember lines. So he would improvise, just out of desperation. And sometimes that stuff worked out pretty well.
What's
"Don't
some
get
of
caught
the
watching the
things?
paint dry" was an improvised line. Yes.
Really?
Yes, it was. He couldn't think of what the
Wow.
line was at that point, and he threw that out there.
What was the line? Do you
I don't
remember?
remember. I went back and looked in the script, and it was in the script, but that's because we made the adjustment.
And that's wild, because that's one of when you think of movies, great ones, the great ones have just line after line after line that are stuck in your head. And that's one of them. Don't get caught watching the page right. And for that to have been an ad lib by a non-athlete that's wild, that how the brain works for those guys.
Yeah, I mean, I go to the Hoosier gym in Knightstown and I see it on T-shirts. Don't get watching what's the bait right. There's another line that kind of like we I wouldn't say made up, but I added during the moment, and it wasn't in the script. When Jimmy Chitwood says, "I'll make it," um, I wanted him just to nod, but I was afraid that it wouldn't, because I didn't want to give Jimmy any dialogue, or as few words as possible. So I was afraid it wasn't going to come across for him just nodding, meaning "I'll make it." So I just had him. I said, "Well, we may use it or may not use it," And of course, now it's on hats and T-shirts. That line.
It's amazing how those things go. Only got a couple of minutes left. I don't want to keep you forever. What's going on with you now? What are you doing? Anything to update us on?
Well, I just finished a new film, a personal coming of age script that I directed this fall here in Bloomington, and I'm going to LA in about 3 weeks and do the final 6 weeks of post production.
Sounds exciting. When will it be out?
Well, we made it as a super low budget film, and then we're gonna go in May 1st. It'll be not May 1st, like at the June 1st. It'll be finished, and then we'll go out to try to sell it. And whoever buys it will determine when it comes out.
Distribution and all that. Oh, sounds awesome. I can't wait to be. I'm gonna be in one of your movies one of these days.
Well, I never heard that before.
I can imagine. Angelo, I cannot thank you enough as always. You are always so gracious with us, and I am so grateful to you for your time. It's just always wonderful, and I know the people really enjoy it.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Angelo Pizzo joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, producer, writer of multiple feature films, not just Hoosiers, involved with Rudy and so many others, by All-American, great friend of the show, Bloomington native and resident. So grateful to have him along, just sharing some incredible stories, some things that you just don't get to hear. And it's awesome to hear those. And Angelo's a great guy, as a matter of fact, a great sports fan. He's a big Indiana fan as well. So it's great to have him in town. And how about Bloomington? How wild is it? You have Angelo Pizzo that lives here. You have Jesse Eisenberg that lives here, who was in the Social Network, and he has many other things going on. Mellencamp lives here in Bloomington. David Lee Roth was born in Bloomington. John Wertheim, who is a host on 60 Minutes right now, went to Bloomington North High School. Kind of crazy, but and then there's me, the black sheep of the city. Just kidding. Hello, sports fans. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you for stopping by our YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the subscribe and notifications toggle so you never miss a thing. All of our content up here every day. Looking forward to it. Thank you, and we'll see you on the radio.